from The Deep-Rooted Marriage by Dan Allender and Steve Call. As we open ourselves to our spouses, we also can open ourselves to the heart of God, allowing His extravagant grace, compassion, and delight to trickle down into the core of us. It is, in fact, part of why He brought us together, so we could know intimacy with each other and with Him, and experience His love in profound and powerful ways. Whatever your relational dynamic is today, whether it is on the rocks, soaring above the clouds, or living somewhere in the middle orbit of reality, I want you to know you and your partner are meant for more. No matter how difficult or sweet your marriage is, God created you for more than whatever you are experiencing today. We are not here just to survive or even have a good marriage. Every marriage is meant to be a taste of heaven, a glimpse back to Eden, and an anticipation of what will one day be true. We are the face of God to each other.
Hey, welcome back to The Pilgrim's Way. It's good to be here. Good to be here with you guys. We are doing another... Phil, what are we calling these? Book reviews? Book recommendations?
Yeah, both. I mean, this is the book of the month for February. You know, it's Valentine's Day, so thinking about marriage and love and all of those things, I think I wanted to recommend a book this year that would zero in on marriage. I think marriages are regularly struggling at times, and I think we often don't know why we continue to struggle with the same issues. I found this book a while back and found it to be tremendously insightful and helpful, and so I thought that it would be good for us as a church to dig into it.
Yeah, and this is the title here is The Deep-Rooted Marriage: Cultivating Intimacy, Healing, and Delight by Allender and Call. Of course, we're all reading these books together before we come on and make this podcast. We sat down to discuss this book a few weeks ago. And I was like, my insides were like really, really pushing against this book because of the psychology aspect of it. There's been some stuff in my past that I have an adverse reaction to this kind of teaching, this kind of language. So I think not all of that is without merit. There are certainly a lot of bad in this area of cultural psychology or non-Christian therapy type stuff. But as I was reading it, I think I told you, Phil, I was like, man, I really don't like this. Like, there's just the psychobabble stuff is just not for me. I don't really want to know about my trauma and all this stuff. And but as I kept reading it, it got better because it didn't focus on, hey, you're the victim. You like much of our dialogue today with therapy is you're the victim and everyone needs to cater to your felt needs now.
Well, you're not responsible for your sin.
Right. That's the biggest thing is I never want to present a teaching that would lead someone to say, I'm not responsible for this action that I'm doing today. And if you can fall into that ditch with this therapeutic gospel type stuff, where that is where you'll end up. But I think they did a really good job of kind of bringing me back and winning me over to the book because they didn't just leave it there. They talked about, hey, now you need to come and fix these things. And so maybe we should set up what this book is talking about, because now it sounds like I'm rambling. But Doug, why don't you give some insight? What is this book talking about? Why is it so helpful, and why is it so needed today?
So the premise of this book is that you have already been discipled as to how you are going to act in marriage.
Yeah.
And it's to really take a look, a deep look at who you were discipled by, how you understand it. What is our actual goal? Our actual goal in marriage is to love our spouse as Christ loved the church. We have this great goal, but that relationship is perfect. It is holy. It is good. It is in constant communion with one another. Communication is clear. And so that's our goal. But what we see is, because of our families of origin and because of how we were discipled as husbands and wives, we bring some unique perspectives that we really need to be brought into the light. So, for instance, perhaps you were raised with a parent that whenever things didn't go their way, they just shut down, and everyone kind of had to walk on eggshells. Perhaps you were raised with a domineering parent. Perhaps you were raised with a parent who was always kind of like, woe is me, no one really loves me, and they kind of needed like constant affirmation and confirmation that they were doing things well. And so that has affected how you came to marriage. And so you came to marriage this way, and your spouse came to marriage with their own set of unique challenges, or we could say dysfunctions. And so then the goal is, so how do I, a sinful person who is getting married and in this covenant relationship with my wife, a sinful person who is bringing her own unique things into this marriage, how do we then look at this goal of saying, I want to love my spouse as Christ loved the church, but I think I react to things poorly. I think that my instincts are wrong when it comes to some of these things. How do I look at these things biblically? That's what this book is to help us to say like, let's do the deep pilgrimage to the interior of our motivations and say, how can we be more loving? How can we be open? How can we bring things to the surface, into the light that need to be brought into the light, so that we can communicate clearly and purely and have a marriage that does reflect Christ's love for the church?
Yeah, I think the benefit of it is Jesus himself said that all of our sin streams from our heart.
Yeah.
So you have to trace the root. If a lot of times in marriage, we want to just kind of deal with the fruit that's being, the behaviors that are causing conflict, or at least that's the manifestation of the conflict, without understanding why we keep going back to those same behaviors. Why do we keep going back to those same patterns of reaction to one another? And I think for me, this book was extremely enlightening to see why I react the way I react to stress, why I react the way I react to fear, why I react, to the sense that something is off in the relationship. Why do I do those things? And at the beginning of the book, and on page 35, he talks about dealing with the present means addressing the past. And when I first came to that, I thought, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
But
I had the same reaction.
But it was true.
Yeah, he's right.
It's so true, because when you begin to see, I have created a habit of reaction, or whether it's self-preservation or whatever that's how I'm going to continue to react. And sometimes those reactions are sinful. And in order to deal with that habit of reaction, I have to understand why I'm reacting that way. And so that's why I found this book. He says on page 35, you and your partner's failure of each other is incredibly complex, tangled up with your deeply held ways of being in the world and the relational patterns you each developed in response to trauma throughout your lives. And so when you experience an emotional, mental, physical catastrophe of some level, some are obviously greater than others, but it changes how you protect yourself, how you respond, and then that can just continue to create grooves in your life so that you react in the same way.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was helpful for me about this was there is sort of actually a biblical precedent for this. Like in terms of generational sin, like the Israelites would for generations be involved in this sin, and then one generation would say no more, and they had to throw off these things that their fathers and their fathers were doing, tear down the high places and instead serve the Lord. And then thinking about Paul's language in putting on and putting off in the New Testament, it's a lot easier to put off the sinful things when you know what those things are and why they're coming. Why do you, after a long day of work, come home and just completely shut down? Like you're struggling to figure out, why can't I just engage with my family after work? Maybe it's this problem that this is something that your family has trained you to do. And it's not so much like oh, I figured it out now. Now I'm good. Like now you know where to actually attack the issue at. I think that's what was helpful for me. What about you, Kyle?
Well, not to use the title here in a flippant way, but everything that stuck out for me was always went back to the root of why it was there. And they listed several things throughout the book, like where does your contempt come from? Where's it coming from? How was it rooted in you? How was it developed? How was it grown? And I can remember saying when I was growing up, I don't want to be like my dad. But that came out of frustration and fear and misunderstanding because I didn't understand why my dad seemed to discipline me more than he did my other siblings. Then as I got older and got married, because I never really dealt with it. My dad was killed in an accident when I was 15, and I didn't really deal with some of that until I got married. And then when I got married, I began to understand, oh my goodness, I'm doing the very things that my father exhibited when I thought he was angry with me or he was disciplining me. And I'm just like him. Why? Why am I doing this? Well, I started going back to those patterns that, Phil, you discussed earlier. And I had to come to terms with the fact that I was an ugly guy because I was letting those things control me rather than thinking about what is it in my marriage that I can do to show Patty that I love her, but also exemplify Christ. That the opening you read, the last line, or that Doug read says, we are the face of God to each other. We exhibit what comes out of our heart. What do I really believe about this marriage? And I had to do some, even in the little bit that I read into the middle of the book, I had to stop on Friday morning when I was reading and think, wow, Lord, I need to repent. Because even this week, there was some of that there. So anyway, I could babble on forever too.
Yeah, I know that's good. So where did you guys see this book, like, really practically, like what is their call to action now? Like we figured out, and again, we would highly recommend that you pick up this book because there's so much more that we can't discuss, given the time restraint. But we've talked about going back to the root of why we are falling into these certain patterns. But what is it now that we do? How do we attack these patterns? How do we put them to death?
Well, he talks about in the book change agents, and I think that's extremely helpful. And this kind of goes throughout the book. And what's really interesting to me is I was reading this along with some stuff that I was reading in the spiritual formation department about spiritual disciplines, and the reason that you do spiritual disciplines is because you are striving to become in your character humble or self-controlled or loving. You can't just decide to be that. When you have habitually trained yourself to be selfish or to be prideful or whatever it might be. So you utilize spiritual disciplines or spiritual habits, spiritual exercises like scripture and prayer and giving and fasting and things like this to train your heart towards being loving or serving or whatever it might be. So what I found here was extremely helpful because they're advocating the same kind of thing. And so, you have these qualities that they are going to recommend that you pursue.
Is that on page 36?
Yeah, page 36 and 37.
Yeah. One of those, just to interject here, I read the list and I thought, what?
Yeah.
Why is defiance on the list?
Yeah.
But then I read it and understood.
Yeah. But he says these are not attitudes for us to conjure on our own, nor are they simply behaviors for us to learn to perform. These are depiction of the Spirit of the living God at work in us, of a God whose nature is unlike our own. When we create space for him to come close, to love us and lead us, we can lean into what he reveals. And it's language that's different, but it's the same concept. We draw near to God and he draws near to us, and in that we are transformed. And so these change agents like humility, honesty, kindness, curiosity, defiance,
Yeah.
intention to bless. These are things that come up throughout the book, but there are the fruits of the Spirit at some level that God is producing in us. But we learn through the book how to pursue these qualities in an ongoing daily basis to kind of retrain and reform new habits.
Yeah. And just to clarify, defiance is not what you think it is.
Yeah.
It's basically saying, no, I will not allow my past or my issue or this sin of anger or frustration to take hold. So
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, he says defiance is a refusal to let hurt, anger, and past failure to determine the future of what we are able to create together. A stance of hell no to death in all its forms, whatever hardens us and keeps us from having a life of connection between us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Doug, did you have any
I was just going to say,
thoughts on that?
how I would recommend this book to a couple would be, first of all, this is a great book to go through, even in premarital counseling. If you are,
I think it would be especially helpful
Yeah.
for premarital counseling.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. But basically, this would be a book that would be something that you could read together, that you would want to discuss little chunks by little chunks, like this list of 6, like you just went through, Phil. That would be a very helpful list. But to kind of go through and work through, like, how can we be very intentional in our communication? Offer up to the other person, like, are there things that I do that you would say, it seems like you go into an unhealthy system when you get stressed, or you go into unhealthy behaviors when things aren't going your way, or any number of things, and to really listen to your spouse or future spouse and say, like, yeah, these are some of the things. But it's gonna require a great deal of humility to say, I will receive correction from my spouse, and not only that, but I'm going to gently speak truth. But this would be a great book to kind of go through as a couple, little by little, to discuss these things. And also, I think it's going to be redemptive relationally with whoever was kind of your marriage model growing up, to say, you know what, I see some of the struggles that these people had, and there were some good things and there were some great takeaways. And I hope that in a sense I am like mom and dad in how they did this. But I also see there were parts of their marriage that perhaps didn't reflect Christ's love for the church, and I hope to have that with my spouse. So I think it's ultimately redemptive to go through it together. And also, I would say this: my experience with couples that are going through some kind of marriage counseling, or even just in a healthy spot but want to do better, one person is going to be slightly more ready for this than the other person, and that is okay. If you feel like, I'm reading this with my spouse and they aren't quite engaging with me on the same level that I'm, go ahead and continue to be vulnerable, continue to be open, continue to be transparent, because you are opening a communication pathway now to where there can be some real good long-term spiritual healing.
Yeah, there was an interesting point you just made concerning the redemption of our own models, our parents. We do have to remember that there is a command to honor your father and your mother. Yes. And if you read this and then automatically decide I'm going to blame everything on them, you're going to fall into a bad ditch. So we have to, but also you have to be real. Like you also have to understand, like you said, hey, there were some things that were great that my parents modeled really well. There's a lot of stuff that they didn't model very well, and so, how can I change that family trajectory while still honoring them, while still being respecting them. So that's a good point.
And I think as we grow and we're younger and we're looking to those models, we have the tendency to focus on the negative. Because I said earlier I didn't want to be like my dad, but yet there were so many great things about my dad. But it seemed like the harshness or the anger that caught my attention more than the others. But as I grew older, I realized, my dad did a lot of things to show me and to tell me that he loved me and appreciated me and knew that there would be good things in my life. But as a youngster, it was like, you're just angry at me all the time. But
Yeah. Have you
but
guys?
he loved my mom. There was no doubt about it, and we saw that, and they were great role models. Not perfect, but they were really good.
Yeah, I think that temptation is really, really big in my generation, with like the temptation to just blame everything on our parents. Like have you seen the commercials that are like, I don't remember if it's like a insurance commercial or something, but it's like, we can't help you do that, or we can't help you.
Yeah, it's progressive.
Progressive, yeah. They're trying to help them not become their dad or their parents. So funny. Like
awesome.
It is very humorous, but it's also showing something that is prevalent in our society that we want to reject. It's a temptation to dishonor. So be careful of that, but really be real about the failings and where you can bring blessing to your own family, and not continue the cursing that might have happened before. So
as you journey into this, just think about what Doug was saying a minute ago, making yourself vulnerable. And if you ask your spouse to point out these things, you can't become justifying, defensive, and rejecting what they're saying as invalid, or they'll never answer your question again. And you won't learn, and you won't grow. If they're telling you something because you asked something, then receive it.
Yeah, own it.
And if necessary, ask their forgiveness, and then ask the Lord to help you understand and change it for His glory and your good and their good. But you have, how you respond to that marital critique will either bring about life and flourishing, or it will just kill any communication going forward.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we probably should wrap this one up. We would seriously recommend you guys getting this book. I agree with you guys. I think it would be very, very beneficial to work through with your spouse, really to understand why you do the things that you do when things get hard. Why do you shut down? Why do you get angry? And if you can understand why, if you can understand where the problem is coming from at the root, it's much easier. You can see clearly, so that you can start attacking those problems. And taking that what did the hell no stance with these problems. So, all right, well, thank you guys for coming on. Thank you all for tuning in. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. Hope that you enjoyed this book. And until next time, enjoy the journey.